Can we have a roll call, Sherry?
Yes, sir. Mr. Delange?
Here.
Mr. Horian?
Here.
Mr. Desai?
Here.
Mr. Lilly?
Yes.
Ms. Groot is excused. Ms. Tornatore did not respond.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is the minutes from last meeting. Anybody had a chance to read? And do I have a motion?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second. Thank you. Sherry, you can do roll call?
For this one, sir, we can, all in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
Alrighty, so next on the agenda, it's general items, right?
Good morning. I'll let our city attorney read the title, but I just wanted to clarify that the item on the agenda, which is ordinance 2023-03, is not a quasi-judicial hearing. This is just part of new business and under your consideration today.
That's correct, Chair, board members. This ordinance has universal application, so it's not targeted towards one particular property. So it is not a quasi-judicial. So if you'd like, I'd go ahead and read the ordinance. So ordinance 2023-03, an ordinance of the City of Daytona Beach Shores, Florida, relating to the creation of a tour service conditional use, amending the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Land Development Code, amending Appendix G, Chapter 2, entitled Definitions by amending Section 2-2, entitled General Definitions, by creating associated definitions for a tour service conditional use, amending Chapter 14, entitled Zoning Regulations, by amending Section 14-58, entitled Special Exceptions and Conditional Uses, to establish the use and associated conditions of a tour service conditional use in the GC-RD, that's the General Commercial Redevelopment District, and amending the general and facility requirements of a live/work facility conditional use, providing for enforcement and penalties, providing for savings provisions, providing for codification, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Noelle Ayton, City Planner. This is ordinance 2023-03. To summarize, this is amending our land development code to establish a tour service as a conditional use, and then also establish some changes to our live work facility requirements. Just some background. Right now, our land development code obviously doesn't recognize a tour service use, so we have to create that definition, associated definitions, and then create some parameters for permitting that. On April 11th, 2023, by request of Joyride Beachside and then the City Commission, they directed staff to make this amendment and draft an ordinance, so you'll see what's included in there. Ordinance 2023-03, like I said, defines a tour service, creates submission, review, and operational criteria for the tour service facilities in just the GCRD district. It also amends that live work facility to allow daily operators to live in the residential component. It defines what a daily operator is, and then amends the minimum residential square foot from 800 to 700. So the new one would be a 700 square foot residential space. This is a table basically showing what the City Commission requested at that April 11th meeting to contain in this ordinance. One is that a tour service establishment should be in conjunction with or prior to, a restaurant use should be in conjunction with a tour service business or use. So you'll see that that is contained in the ordinance language, that they shall be in conjunction with a bona fide restaurant establishment. That the landscaping should be increased, the GCRD district and as a whole should, try and get towards increased landscaping. So there's two parts in there. One is in the submission requirements, a landscaping plan is required, and then that tour service facility shall have a minimum 20% green area in their front yard. A lot of these, some of these sites are existing. New developed sites will have to conform to our landscaping requirements as a whole, but some of these existing sites we're trying to get in as much as possible. Tour services shall not be seen from view of the right-of-ways. That is contained in here, that they shall be in a completely enclosed building. And then that daily operators shall provide proof of employment, so that the city can verify that that daily operator that's using the residential facility in the Live Works is in fact working and operating a business on a regular basis. How this impacts some of our properties today. This is the table showing what properties would be impacted by a tour service conditional use only in the GCRD district. So right now we have 13 vacant storefronts, 9 vacant properties as a whole, and then 9 total of those storefronts or properties meet the minimum 75-foot lot width and 20,000 lot size standards. So it confines it a little bit to some sort of the larger parcels or larger existing sites that can handle this type of use. This is an example of facilities or parcels. On the left-hand side is a vacant parcel that contains 75-foot lot width and 20,000 square foot in lot size, so that would qualify. And then in the middle is a vacant storefront, however, it doesn't meet those minimum standards. And then on the right is 2120 South Atlantic. It meets all those minimum standards and is also a vacant storefront. So the 2 greens would qualify and the red would not. Analysis of the Live Work facility updates that we're doing. Right now there are 7 existing residential grandfathered 2-story buildings that contain existing residential on the top, commercial on the bottom. And then there are 18 vacant parcels in these commercial zoning districts that could qualify, with new construction. And there are 6 other 2 stories that could qualify that don't have residential today. And then so essentially in the end, 34 properties will benefit between the vacant parcels, the existing residential. If they abandon that use of residential, then they could operate, live, work, in the future sometime. So 34 properties would benefit from this ordinance change. This is just an example of the existing residential that we have with 2-story on the bottom. Those are 2 properties right now, side by side, that have that the city recognizes as existing. These are the same basic examples. These are 2-story commercial properties that have the ability to have live-work facilities on the 2nd floor. There might be some building improvements and so forth that happen between these, but they have that 2nd-story availability. All of our notice requirements have been met for this ordinance change, and staff is recommending approval of ordinance 2023-03 as presented, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Noel. Any questions? Well, I have some, I'm sorry. Okay, so currently, our ordinance indicates that you have to be the owner to live in the upstairs?
That's correct. Right now, it only says that bona fide property owners, business owners, can stay in that residential component. So staff is, proposing the amendment to allow daily operators. So we have a lot of out-of-state owners, and so somebody who's at the business operating at daily has the ability to occupy the
And that's been in the books for a long time.
Yeah, since we established it in 2012.
Because I recall approving the Casual Bird, and it has a residential upstairs, and it's not the owner.
Casual Bird, I believe, is one of those existing residential that's grandfathered in, that's not utilizing the live-work conditional use. Stuart has a
Stuart?
comment.
Thank you, board members. So Casual Bird is actually an exception because it was approved through a development agreement. So it was grandfathered in, but then it was abandoned. But when the development agreement was done a few years ago to develop the property, that was one of the conditions that was allowed within the development agreement. So that's outside of this.
Okay.
That's an exception. And then, of course, there are other properties that pre-existed 2012 when the live work regulations came under the books, and those are grandfathered in, but those were not abandoned. So under the law, they were allowed to continue to exist. So in those cases, you would have either the owner or you would have a tenant, who's not the owner, who would reside in those grandfathered establishments, if you want to call them that.
Thank you, Stuart. I always try to be consistent with our rulings, so that's why I was asking about that. The other aspect you pointed out was 20% landscaping minimum. Isn't that the minimum already?
There are a lot of, yes, minimum standards or minimum tree requirement for new properties that are developing. And then, existing commercial sites, they can contain, a lot of asphalt and concrete. So getting to that new standard is pretty difficult in those existing sites. So 20%. There are properties that already contain 20% in that existing front yard.
And my last question is, how did you come up with 700 square feet for living, minimum?
There are some properties that have smaller residential components already. The property at 2120 South Atlantic has 700 square feet, 704 square feet. So, changing that, it allows for other places in the city that have possible residential components that just don't meet that 800.
Alrighty, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Alrighty, no more questions? Do we have a motion?
We might have some-
Oh, I'm sorry. Statements from the crowd. Thank you. If you can come up and state your name and address.
Good morning, my name is Devin Eskra. This is Danielle Eskra. We reside at 322 Silver Beach Avenue, Daytona Beach. Thank you for having us here this morning. We are really excited about this project. We're kind of bringing some of our, we came from Nashville and we're ready to bring some of what we watched Nashville kind of grow up with into Daytona Beach shores. The one thing I wanted to comment on was the opening up the facility, the tour services in conjunction with the restaurant. As we were reviewing our, plan over the next year, and as we started talking to contractors and surveyors, we don't want the restaurant opening to delay us being able to open up the tour business. The way our tour business operates is we can at least park the vehicles there enclosed, so they're unseen from the right-of-way, and being able to operate in a remote fashion. We can pick people up from their hotels and take them on tours. We wouldn't be driving traffic to that location yet until it was fully improved, and that would allow us then to create the financial flow that we need to keep the project going while we wait for the improvements to happen on the restaurant. And so as a solution to that, because I know the city wants to make sure that the restaurant can open, and that it does get open, we'd be willing to make monthly updates or just keep the city commission abreast as to what's going on with an official report or something along those lines.
How long do you think it's gonna take to get this up and rolling?
So the most recent contractor I talked to, we're still talking to a few different ones, but the most recent one they said it could be about 8 months.
8 months, did you say?
Yeah.
For the restaurant component, the tour component can start immediately as
Right.
soon as we have approval.
Right, but we wouldn't drive any traffic. We wouldn't bring anybody to there other than somebody to park their car to drive a golf cart to work until it was fully improved.
What's the location?
2120 South Atlantic. It's a car wash down there.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to cover up the bays and put our
They have good ice cream.
in there. What'd you say?
You used to have good ice cream.
Yeah, that's what kind of got us inspired to put a restaurant in there as
You
well.
keep the car wash going?
No, the bays will actually turn into garages for the tour vehicles.
Stuart, how does that impact the city's opinion with this change?
With regards to the
The question is, how does this impact the city? Because they're delaying the restaurant by approximately 8 months.
So what I can tell you, and you may have seen in your staff report, is that the commission, when they had the consensus to move forward with this ordinance, they specifically wanted the restaurant to be in conjunction or prior to, in conjunction meaning at the same time or prior to
Right.
the opening of the actual tour establishment. So that is something that ultimately the city will have to make a decision, city council will have to, the city commission will have to make a decision on, and obviously the board can provide a recommendation as well. There are two things I just wanted to clarify. With regards to the landscaping, the 20% landscaping, Mr. Chair, I think you had asked about that. So right now the GCRD district actually doesn't have a landscape requirement in terms of green area that's required. there are general requirements that are associated with the parking area, but in terms of an overall green area requirement, there's none that exists in the GCRD district. And the reason for that is because at the time when the GCRD district was written, we were dealing with a lot of compact and built-out properties. And so in order to facilitate and try to encourage development, the city elected to not go ahead and establish those green area requirements. But now, you know, obviously there's a there's a requirement. The city is proposing a requirement to have at least 20% landscaping in there because we think it's a fair trade-off if somebody wants to come into the city and develop the city, especially in the north side of town where landscaping is so direly needed. We decided to go ahead, based on our analysis, to go ahead and put a 20% requirement in there, and we think it could be achieved, whether it's an established property or it's a property that could be developed over time. The other thing I wanted to mention was with regards to the 700 square feet requirement. I know there was a question about that as well. 700 square feet is actually more than what we have as a minimum for a studio efficiency in the city of Daytona Beach Shores, and even more than a one-bedroom apartment that we have, which for the efficiency is 500 square feet. For a one-bedroom here in the city, it's 600 square feet. So, and over time, we have been getting a lot of calls with regards to reducing that particular number, that threshold from 800 to something lower that would be more acceptable to the actual built environment, because the whole purpose behind the live-work facility is to actually have people live on these properties where they can actually have a stake in the community and actually try to, you know, better improve that property and provide some life in that area. So those are the reasons why you see the 20% landscape green area requirement and the 700 square feet minimum residential component as well.
There. And a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Are you planning to have beer and wine in this establishment? Is that going to be included in the restaurant?
Yes, when the restaurant opens.
Okay. So I just need a little clarification on what's going on. The approval of this ordinance is, if I read it correctly, it's just a suggestion by the city commissioners to have the restaurant, but that's not part of the ordinance itself, is it?
It is, I think it is included in the ordinance that the restaurant has to be a part of the tour business. As the ordinance is written now, certainly you could make recommendations to the commission.
So if there is, Stuart, excuse me, if there is a permit taken out to establish a restaurant, would that be something that would qualify for this? Or is that something that indicating that the restaurant will not be done in 7 or 8 months if they take out a permit for a restaurant and then they start their tour guide? Would that comply with the ordinance?
So, Mr. Chair, the way the ordinance is written, and you know, the staff tried to follow the direction that was given by the commission, and in section 1458.2.2A4B, which is a review criteria, which is basically page 6 of the ordinance, you'll see that it says all facilities proposing tour services shall have been awarded a current and valid certificate of use permit for the restaurant use located on the property. So what that means is that basically the business has to be, you know, turnkey, ready to go. Basically have a certificate of use and ready to go. And again, staff did this because we were trying to follow the direction of the commission that was given to us at the 2 prior meetings. So I believe what is happening right now is, and the attorney, Attorney Waters can go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, but the board has to make a recommendation to the commission. The commission obviously is hearing from some potential proponents with regards to a specific property. The proponents are suggesting that the board make a recommendation to essentially alter the ordinance to allow them to go ahead and have a stay or maybe a prolonged period of time. I think they're saying maybe about, what, 9 months? 9 months?
Yes, this is I would say 9 months.
Correct. And so I believe what the proponents are trying to get the board to do is to make a recommendation of approval with maybe an amendment that would impact them in a positive way. So I'm not sure if I reflected that correctly, but the way the ordinance is currently written, if it is approved by the city the way it is currently written, then unfortunately they would not be able to open their tour service establishment until they have a certificate for use and ready to have that restaurant ready and going.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for that clarification.
Again, staff was just trying to follow the direction given by the commission.
I have a question. What happens if it doesn't happen in 8 months?
The restaurant, well, 9 months, and at that point, we would have to come see you guys. That's why I suggested the monthly reports. You know, if we would know well before that 9 months if it's not going to happen by 9 months. Something that we told the commission, and something that we want to tell you guys is we moved here from about 5 years ago. And this is not the last commercial property we want to buy in Daytona Beach Shores. This is our livelihood. We're not like a big business that's going all over the country opening these things up. This is going to be a small family business, and our relationship with the city is very important to us because we don't want to be at odds as far as trying to do anything in the future, even with this project. So if for whatever reason there would be a delay, we would communicate that well before time, and we can establish that. If it needs to be, once again, a monthly report or a monthly update as to what's going on, we would be more than open to that.
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
again, we're kind of crossing over into the quasi judicial because
Yes.
we're concentrating on this single property. So stick to the ordinance for universal application. If the board is so inclined, you can add a condition that a restaurant license or a restaurant be completed within 9 months, within a year, or however long you think would be appropriate. So that would be an appropriate way for the board to vote. So either approve, deny, or approve with conditions. But again, I'd like to stay away from this,
Understood.
focusing on this particular property because we're crossing over into a different type of legal proceeding.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for further clarification. All righty, do we have any further questions for the individuals?
I'm just a little concerned that, you know, this could lead to just the Joyride opening up and the restaurant never opening up. You know, always an excuse. We've seen this, you know, good intentions are fine. Let's see your actions.
Absolutely.
And I would say that we could probably, I would look favor to this if you have something in the, in our part of it where it gives them a time limit to open a restaurant, or both entities would shut down. Joyride would not be allowed to operate, and of course the restaurant would not be open. As a carrot to get it done. Because like I said, you know, you can say what all you want to say, and God bless you, but your actions speak louder than words.
We'd be open to that.
All righty, thank you. Any further questions, remarks?
I would just say that, so having the restaurant in there as far as the cost of the property and what the tenants will provide, the restaurant is part of the business model, so it doesn't really work for us long-term unless we put a restaurant in there financially. So in addition to us not being able to run our golf carts, there's an additional carrot of our own that, you know, this whole project doesn't work out unless we make that happen.
Thank you. All righty.
Thanks.
We have an opportunity to think this over. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, and Attorney Waters, can you just let me know if I'm heading on the right path with this? I know this is not a quasi-judicial hearing, but I believe the proponents had a reason why they have to push it out 9 months. I thought maybe you had a prospective restaurateur coming in, but then you found out about maybe another business coming by and there was going to be a potential conflict.
So there's still
Do you want to, yeah. And Attorney Waters, is this okay?
As long as the board is, we're not voting on this particular parcel.
Understood.
We're treating this as public comment, basically.
Thank you.
So there is an additional business opening up, I think think just 2 buildings down, that's gonna be very similar to our restaurant, not our restaurant, but our tenant's restaurant. So we have taken that into consideration as to not necessarily lock into this specific tenant. If this tenant still wants to proceed and things go well and we can get it done in a timely fashion, we plan to. But with that information and then the information on the delay as far as contract work goes, we realized that the project may not be done in a month or 2 as we thought it could be.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart.
Riley's Hot Dog Stands.
Yeah. All right. Any further questions or comments from the board? If not, do I have a motion?
Our motion girl's not here.
Yeah. Is there a motion from the board?
So Mr. Chair, I apologize, and Attorney Waters, I apologize as well, because I'm kind of maybe stealing your thunder, but the staff memo that you have before you shows that you have 3 options. To approve the conditions, or to deny, and obviously stating the reason why. So those are the 3 options, if that would help the board in moving forward.
Chair, if I may ask a question, is restaurant, and this is for staff, is restaurant actually a defined use? So in other words, if they bring in a food truck, would that make it a restaurant? If they bring in a hot dog stand, would that make it a restaurant? Does it have to be?
Thank you. The definition of a restaurant is pretty clear in our code, and a food truck is actually a mobile food establishment under our code. So those 2 definitions are pretty clear. And what you're saying, you know, food truck, hot dog stands, those would not qualify as a restaurant.
So Stuart was absolutely correct. The board has 3 options here.
And the board understand that it's either approval of the ordinance as a stand, or I move to approve with the following amendments, or I move to deny. So that's basically our 3 decisions here. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve contingent upon the restaurant being open in 9 months.
Second.
Thank you. Sherry, if we can have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Lilly,
Yes.
Mr. Dorian,
Yes.
Mr. Desai,
Yes.
Mr. Delange.
Yes. All righty. Passed. Any other comments or?
Thank you.
This is, I'm glad that we had the discussion that we did because it clarified a lot of things. And thank you for your leadership and guidance. We cannot do it without you, so we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. And Chair, just one more clarification. This is just a recommendation.
Yes, it has to pass by
Right.
commission.
So it still has first and second reading, and they will consider your recommendation.
All righty, Sherry, our next meeting will be in June. All righty, June 12th, when is? Just for clarification purposes?
Do we have something, do we know?
June 12th?
I'm not sure.
We'll let you know if we're gonna have it.
All righty, just for the record so we can indicate. If there's no other actions or questions or comments, the meeting is adjourned.